You've been lied to your entire life. They told you to be nice, to always agree, to put others first. And yet, the more you give, the less you're respected. Today, I'll show you the brutal truth, why being the nice guy destroys you, and how to transform into a man. From the moment you were young, you were told to be nice. Parents, teachers, and society fed you the same script: smile, agree, avoid conflict, don't raise your voice, don't make others uncomfortable. You were taught that if you gave enough, if you were always kind, if you were endlessly patient, then people would love you, peck you, and reward you. But reality is not a fairy tale, and the truth is far darker. Being nice is not a virtue in this world. It's a curse. It signals weakness, and weakness never commands respect. The man who is too nice reveals his hand before the game even begins. He shows that he is harmless, that he will never fight back, that he can be bent without resistance. And what happens when people see that? They take advantage of it. They push boundaries, they make demands, they drain your time and energy because they know you won't resist. The nice man thinks his constant sacrifices will make him loved, but instead it makes him invisible. People walk past him, never considering him a leader, never treating him as someone to follow. He is useful, yes, only in the way a servant is useful, never in the way a master is. The curse of niceness is that it blinds you to the brutal truth of human nature. People are not moved by how kind you are, they are moved by how strong you appear. They respect those who create boundaries, those who demand value before giving it, those who can say no without hesitation. But when you're nice, you trade your strength for approval. You surrender your authority in exchange for crumbs of validation. You become a man who bends to everyone's will but his own. And over time, that eats at you. You start to feel resentment because deep down, you know you're being used. But instead of changing, the nice man doubles down, giving even more, hoping this time it will finally be enough. It never is. Nice men live in a cycle of disappointment. They expect that if they treat others with unconditional kindness, they will eventually get something in return. But here lies the cruel paradox. People rarely reward those who demand nothing. Instead, they admire the man who stands firm, who refuses to beg for attention, who doesn't care if others approve or not. This man is not enslaved by the opinions of others. He acts in alignment with his own goals, and in doing so, he becomes magnetic. The nice man, on the other hand, is forgettable because he makes himself easy to replace. His approval is cheap, his time is always available, his kindness is automatic. What is abundant loses its value. Think of the relationships in your own life. The friends who only call you when they need something. The people who disappear when you need help. Partners who lose interest once they realize you'll do anything to please them. All of this comes from the same disease: niceness without strength. You've trained the world to treat you this way. You've told them that you will bend, that you will agree, that you will always choose peace over confrontation. And once that message is received, no one will ever see you as a man of power. They will see you as a man who exists to serve. The world has no shortage of nice men. They fill offices, relationships, and social circles, always saying yes, always nodding, always agreeing. And yet, they are rarely the ones who rise to the top. Look closely at who leads, who gets respected, who is desired. It is never the man who tries to be everything to everyone. It is the man who can walk away without fear, the man who commands respect by holding back his kindness until it has been earned. The man who uses generosity as a choice, not as a default setting. Niceness is weakness when it is unconditional. Strength is knowing when to give and when to withhold. To remain in the role of the nice guy is to accept a life of being underestimated, undervalued, and overlooked. You may avoid conflict, you also avoid respect. You may avoid rejection, but you also avoid admiration. And in time, the truth will eat away at you. You were not kind because of love. You were kind because you were afraid. Afraid to stand your ground. Afraid to offend. Afraid to lose people who never truly valued you in the first place. That fear is the true curse, and until you confront it, you will never be free. Do you want me to continue and expand Keynote 2 in the same style, minimum 700 words, sharp and Machiavellian tone? In every corner of life, from the workplace to relationships, from friendships to strangers on the street, people are drawn to power, not kindness. Kindness is admirable, only when it flows from a place of strength, when it is deliberate, when it costs something. But when kindness is your default weapon, when it is scattered freely in search of approval, it loses all value. People may smile at you, they may accept what you offer, but deep inside, they do not respect you. They know you will always give, so they feel no need to value the gift. Respect, on the other hand, is born not from kindness but from power, the ability to command, to resist, to set boundaries, to act with intention instead of weakness. Human nature is not shaped by ideals but by instincts. At the core, people seek to align themselves with those who can lead, those who can protect, those who have the strength to stand apart. A man who cannot stand apart, who folds himself into the desires of others, is not admired. He is used. Look at history, look at the leaders who were remembered, feared, and followed. They were not chosen for how nice they were, but for the authority they carried, for the aura of certainty and dominance they projected. People crave the security of following someone who knows what they want and takes it without hesitation. The tragedy of the nice man is that he mistakes affection for respect. He thinks that if people like him, they will also value him. But liking someone and respecting them are two different currencies. A person may like you for being agreeable, for always saying yes, for always giving your time, your energy, your attention. But when it comes to true respect, the kind that makes people listen when you speak, the kind that makes them think twice before crossing you, niceness is powerless. Respect requires consequences, and the nice man refuses to create them. He forgives too quickly, he tolerates too much, and in doing so, he teaches others that his words carry no weight. The truth is simple. People respect power because power shapes outcomes. Kindness by itself shapes nothing. A man who is kind but powerless cannot protect his family, cannot lead his peers, cannot create the reality he desires. His kindness is a fragile mask that falls apart the moment conflict arises. But a man who is powerful, who knows how to assert himself, who can deny, withdraw, and enforce, his kindness becomes a weapon. It becomes rare, valuable, deeply appreciated, because it is backed by the ability to withhold. Only the strong can make kindness meaningful, because only they have the choice to not give it. This is why people respond differently to two men offering the same act of generosity. When it comes from a weak man, it feels cheap. It feels desperate, as though he is buying attention. But when it comes from a man who is respected, a man who does not bend to every whim, that same act feels profound. It feels like an honor, like a privilege. The difference is not the act itself, but the power behind it. Power transforms kindness from something expected into something treasured. The man who seeks respect must understand that his goal is not to be liked, but to be taken seriously. This requires a shift in perspective. Every action must be weighed not by how much it pleases others, but by whether it strengthens or weakens his position. Saying yes too often weakens him. Avoiding conflict weakens him. Pleasing everyone weakens him. But setting boundaries, refusing to be used, walking away when necessary, these are the actions that create an aura of power. People may complain in the moment, but they will remember. They will treat him differently, because they know he is not a man who can be bent. Power is not about loudness or aggression. It is not about shouting or dominating others in a crude way. Real power is silent, controlled, and undeniable. It is the calmness of a man who knows he cannot be manipulated. It is the stillness of someone who does not chase, does not beg, does not sell his soul for approval. This quiet authority is more intimidating than noise because it cannot be shaken. People instinctively respect it because it signals inner strength. In contrast, niceness without strength signals fear. It reveals a man who is too afraid to displease, too afraid to be rejected, too afraid to stand alone. And the truth is, people do not follow fear. They exploit it. They take what they can from it, but they never admire it. If you are always kind without showing strength, you are not seen as noble. You are seen as safe to ignore. You blend into the background. Another man who will always comply, always bend, always give, never demand. That is not respect. That is quiet dismissal. To command respect, you must be willing to withdraw what others take for granted. You must become scarce where you were once abundant. You must let people feel the weight of losing your attention, your time, your energy. Only then will they begin to value it. Only then will kindness become meaningful. Respect grows not from endless giving, but from disciplined restraint. It is built not on how often you say yes, but on how firmly you can say no. This is the nature of power, and this is why people respect it far more than kindness. Do you want me to move on and expand Keynote 3 in the same sharp, Machiavellian style's minimum 700 words? The man who lives as a pleaser does not live for himself. His actions are guided not by his own desires, but by the expectations of everyone around him. He shapes his words, his gestures, and even his ambitions to keep others comfortable. At first glance, this may look noble, as though he is selfless and kind. But beneath the surface, it is weakness disguised as virtue. The pleaser is terrified of disapproval. He cannot imagine standing alone, so he builds his identity around pleasing others in hopes of being accepted. Yet the irony is bitter. The more he gives himself away, the less he is valued. A pleaser is predictable. He says yes because he fears no. He smiles because he fears confrontation. He agrees because he fears rejection. Every move he makes is controlled by fear, and others sense it. They know they can extract compliance without resistance, so they do. The pleaser believes that through constant giving he will earn loyalty, but all he earns is dependence. People rely on him not because they admire him, but because they know he will never refuse. That kind of man is not seen as strong, he is seen as disposable. The shift from pleaser to strategist begins when a man understands that survival, influence, and respect are not built on pleasing others, but on controlling himself. A strategist does not act to be liked, he acts with a purpose. Every word, every move, every decision is measured against one question: does this serve my strength or weaken it? Unlike the pleaser, he does not scatter his energy trying to satisfy everyone. He calculates where to give, where to withdraw, and where to deny entirely. He sees relationships not as places to lose himself, but as arenas where his presence must have weight. This shift requires a brutal recognition. Not everyone deserves your kindness, your time, or your energy. When you are a pleaser, you act as if your value is infinite, always available, always within reach. A strategist, however, treats himself as a scarce resource. He knows that what is rare becomes valuable. By limiting his availability, he forces others to appreciate it. When he gives attention, it matters. When he agrees, it carries weight. When he offers kindness, it is treasured because it is not automatic. To become a strategist, a man must develop boundaries sharper than steel. He must practice the art of saying no without guilt, of stepping back when demands do not align with his purpose, of refusing to be drained by those who only take. This is not cruelty, it is discipline. Discipline is what separates the respected from the forgotten. People may not always like a strategist, but they will always think twice before crossing him. And that is the foundation of influence. The strategist also understands timing. A pleaser acts immediately, rushing to satisfy the smallest request. He exposes his eagerness. Eagerness is a sign of weakness. The strategist, on the other hand, acts when it benefits him. He delays when needed, withholds when necessary, and only moves when the outcome strengthens his position. This calculated patience makes his actions feel deliberate, almost inevitable, and it creates an aura of control that others cannot ignore. Perhaps the most important difference lies in how the pleaser and strategist handle conflict. The pleaser avoids it at all costs, shrinking himself to maintain harmony. But harmony built on self-erasure is not real, it is submission. The strategist, however, does not fear conflict. He uses it as a tool. He knows that when handled with precision, conflict establishes boundaries more effectively than words. A well-timed refusal, a firm stand, a calculated withdrawal, all of these send signals that cannot be misunderstood. The strategist does not seek conflict for its own sake, but he does not run from it either. He uses it to define the limits of what he will and will not tolerate. Over time, the strategist becomes a man others approach carefully. They know he will not bend easily, that his generosity has limits, that his approval cannot be bought with flattery or compliance. This careful respect is what the pleaser never achieves. Where the pleaser is overlooked, the strategist is acknowledged. Where the pleaser is taken for granted, the strategist is valued. Where the pleaser blends into the background, the strategist becomes a figure people cannot ignore. The transformation from pleaser to strategist is not about becoming cold or heartless. It is about reclaiming authority over yourself. It is about realizing that you do not exist to be consumed by others. You exist to pursue your own purpose, and others must adapt to it. The pleaser sacrifices his own will in the hopes of being accepted. The strategist strengthens his will and lets acceptance come as a consequence. One lives in fear of rejection, the other makes rejection irrelevant. When you operate as a strategist, people begin to sense that they cannot manipulate you. They cannot guilt you into compliance. They cannot flatter you into submission. And they cannot use kindness as a chain around your neck. Your presence becomes commanding because it is grounded in control. You give, but only when it serves your strength. You refuse, but without apology. You walk away, but without hesitation. And through this discipline, you stop existing as a background figure in other people's lives and instead become a force they must reckon with. Would you like me to continue and expand Keynote 4 in the same ruthless, Machiavellian tone as minimum 700 words? A man without boundaries is a man without identity. When you allow everyone to have access to you at any time, when you agree to every request, when you say yes simply to avoid discomfort, you slowly erase yourself. You become a hollow reflection of what others want you to be. And this is the great tragedy of the so-called nice guy. His life is not his own. It belongs to everyone who makes demands of him. He thinks that endless availability will make him loved, but it only makes him predictable, replaceable, and invisible. The true advantage in life comes from the ability to establish boundaries so sharp and unwavering that others are forced to respect them, whether they like them or not. Boundaries are not walls built from anger. They are signals of strength. They tell the world, this is where I end, and this is where you cannot cross. Most men fear setting boundaries because they believe it will drive people away. They are terrified of rejection, being disliked, of creating conflict. But in reality, the opposite is true. Weak men who fail to enforce limits are the ones abandoned, ignored, and overlooked. Strong men, those who draw clear lines and enforce them, are not only respected but often pursued. Why? Because boundaries create scarcity, and scarcity creates value. Imagine two men. One is endlessly available, ready to answer every call, ready to help at a moment's notice, ready to sacrifice his own priorities whenever someone else needs him. The other guards his time fiercely. He does not say yes automatically. He considers carefully whether each request aligns with his purpose. And if it doesn't, he rejects it without guilt. Which man do you think people take seriously? The one who bends without resistance, or the one who forces others to weigh their requests before even approaching him? The answer is obvious. Boundaries transform you from a tool into a force. The ruthless advantage of boundaries is that they filter your world. When you begin to enforce limits, the leeches, manipulators, and opportunists will expose themselves. They will resist, complain, and even try to shame you because they can no longer feed on your compliance. The people who truly value you will adapt. They will adjust because they recognize your strength. Boundaries don't push away the right people. They attract them. They separate those who are using you from those who are willing to respect you. Every time you enforce a boundary, you send a message. I value myself more than your approval. And this is the message that commands respect. It is easy to like a man who always says yes, but it is impossible to respect him. Respect is born when others realize there are consequences for crossing you, that your tolerance has limits, that your presence comes with conditions. A man who enforces boundaries creates an atmosphere of gravity. People move differently around him. They measure their words more carefully. They value his attention more deeply because they know it is not given lightly. The fear of boundaries comes from the illusion that kindness alone is enough to hold relationships together. But in truth, relationships without boundaries are one-sided, draining, and ultimately doomed. A man who refuses to draw lines will eventually be consumed by resentment. He will give until he is empty, and then he will explode or withdraw, blaming others for taking too much when in reality, he never had the courage to say no. Boundaries are not just protection from others, they are protection from yourself. They prevent you from betraying your own values in exchange for temporary approval. The man who masters boundaries also masters control over his emotions. He does not explode in anger when someone disrespects him because he has already made clear what will and will not be tolerated. He does not beg for loyalty because his boundaries automatically filter out those who were never loyal in the first place. He does not fear walking away because he knows that his worth is not dependent on anyone's validation. This unshakable control is what gives him power. It makes him ungovernable by guilt, immune to manipulation, and free from the chains of other people's demands. It is in boundaries that true freedom is found. Freedom to pursue your purpose without being derailed by every distraction. Freedom to invest in people who actually value you instead of wasting yourself on those who don't. Freedom to live with clarity, knowing exactly where you stand and forcing others to meet you on your terms. Without boundaries, you are a servant to everyone else's desires. With them, you are a sovereign force, shaping your life with deliberate intent. The ruthless advantage of boundaries is that they make you untouchable in a world that thrives on exploitation. The workplace will try to consume every ounce of your time if you let it. Relationships will drain you if you give endlessly without requiring balance. Friends will lean on you until you collapse if you never set limits. But when you draw lines and defend them, you establish yourself as someone who cannot be drained at will. People may resist at first, but over time, they will treat you with the seriousness you have demanded. The man who enforces boundaries may not always be loved, but he will always be respected. Do you want me to now write a powerful conclusion for the entire script in the same Machiavellian style? Tying all 4 keynotes together, the curse of being the nice guy is not kindness itself, but weakness disguised as virtue. A man who lives to please others surrenders his authority before he ever has a chance to claim it. People do not respect endless giving. They respect strength, discipline, and the ability to say no. Niceness without power is forgettable. Power with restraint is unforgettable. To step out of the shadows of weakness, you must shed the identity of the pleaser and embrace the mindset of the strategist. Every move you make must serve your position, not weaken it. Your approval must be earned, your time must be valued, and your presence must carry weight. When you learn to enforce boundaries without guilt, when you stop fearing rejection, when you live as a man who does not bend at every demand, you no longer live at the mercy of others. You live on your own terms. The world will always test you. It will try to drain you, bend you, and break you. The man who refuses to be nice at the cost of his strength, the man who chooses power over approval, becomes untouchable. He is not controlled by fear of rejection. He is not bound by the need for constant validation. He is respected because he cannot be used, valued because he cannot be replaced, and followed because he cannot be ignored. Others can't ignore.